Hey everyone, Dave Stifter from PredictAP here. A quick thought of the day around build versus buy. I think as a technical professional or leader of an organization, you always have this decision to be made. Should I build something or should I buy something off the shelf? And sometimes it can be very clear. So I'm not going to go build Teams, right? I'm not going to go build Slack. I'm not going to go build an ERP system. Though some people have, right? If you're incredibly ambitious, I think that happens. Sometimes it's very clear the other way. Hey, this Excel template of, you know, acquisition underwriting, maybe there's something very nuanced of how we want to do things, and we're gonna build that, right? Because that's part of core IP and how we approach it, and that's something we want to do. Um, and I think there's a lot now in the middle where you can see a path to building and you can see a path to buying. And where we're in such a transition period around these new AI tools, it can get a little more foggy as around should I build or should I wait, or should I go look for something that's in market. Um, and I think there's lots of areas where uh, you can definitely apply these tools, personal enablement, using tools that are available and making that accessible to folks to be able to build prompts and things like that, where uh, you're creating a company-specific local view of things like the prompt engineer. I was at Realcomm recently. One of the firms talked about a bounty on good prompts, because a good prompt can really enable a lot of things, and understanding how to properly get the data you want is very valuable. But I've also seen cases where folks have invested a lot of time and money into something that they get a pretty good option, and I do think there's always an ability to to customize to a very high degree when you build, um, that, and you can also take a lot of shortcuts, right? You can create a set of variables or a set of assumptions that you know are going to be correct. And when you're building for a company, you can take those shortcuts and have some very if this then that type stuff that's particular to your company. And that's frankly how when PredictAP started, it was started at my working for one company, and you can take some of those base assumptions. But when you're building a true SaaS product or a true multi-tenant, multi-client product, you can't, right? You don't want to create a situation where some companies do. We didn't want to take an approach where we have a human in the loop that has to build and maintain rule sets. And so, those kind of shortcuts you could take aren't really available as a software vendor. But there is an area of complexity where internal technical resources or internal budget maybe not enough to truly solve the problem. And some examples of this might be around, say, document extraction, so lease abstraction and things like that. And I know there's firms that have done this, and again, maybe there's some advantage, right? So if your firm has, this is a good example. Say your firm has a really good history of having structured abstracts, right? You do leases, but you have consistent abstractions. So you have this layer already of highly structured data. You may be able to create a very, very effective lease abstraction tool on top of that without going to a vendor, because you have high structure, right? And consistency and deep quality data. But I'll say if you're going to try to do that from unstructured, just pure lease documents, and those leases, as reality is, probably have a lot of variation, a lot of nuance. You're going to be able to be successful on some subset without a ton of investment, but down the road you're gonna have compromises, right? And these edge cases that aren't really well handled. And the more edge cases and the more um, uh, problems you come across, then you're gonna start to get into the issue around, can you trust the data, or do you need to have review processes on top of that data? So as you start building this, you're investing, right? You're investing in something that you need to maintain, right? You need to continue to add features because people always want more features and things. And now your team is responsible for having this maintenance and increased capacity to enhance the product. And then you're going to have to build on top of it layers of review and error correction as well. So it becomes the bulk of, or the bloat of building and maintaining this becomes bigger and bigger. And that's where um, the external vendors can be very helpful, right? Because they have substantially more resources, right? A lot of these firms, like, that's usually subtractions and good venture-backed firms out there, that their whole life and focus is, number one, continuing to build and expand the feature set, and number two, starting to understand these edge cases and coming up with really good solutions, and also layering on top of that tools around that review, compliance, that exception management. For PredictAP, this is actually how our UI evolved, where at first I had all these wishes of how I thought the UI should be as a client of one of the big ERP systems, where I was like, well, I'd like it to do this and that. And we found that most people want to be in one system. They want to be in the core ERP. And that was a strategic decision, where we want everyone to be in the ERP with the exception of that error exception management, where we want to be able to bring those errors to you. And so when we build for our customers, so we're seeing millions of invoices. We have very, very high quality engineers. Their whole lives are focused around truly understanding this problem and bringing the latest and greatest tech to solving these more complicated, nuanced issues around invoice coding. So we're able to continually invest in the product, add features, and add those layers of tooling around exception management. And so for our clients, the technical requirement is very light, right? Is that interface user connection still working? And some training around, as new employees come on and all of that, even though we're excited to assist with training as well. But it takes that burden off the client, right? And we're investing millions of dollars into this, and staying on the leading edge of that, which enables our clients to focus on other problems where there may be more nuanced, more company-specific cases. Because at the core, we're able to understand the company-specific accounting and all of that. We build models for each customer, but we were able to take the feedback of all of our customers and really just deliver a better experience. And so it wouldn't make sense, and the cost we're able to sell is significantly lower. And that's the other thing we've seen, is that some people, even on our use case, have looked at an OCR scrape or something like that and solved that very basic header problem very quickly, and that gave them confidence, like, well, maybe we could do these other things, and they end up spending huge amounts of money and hitting walls around complexity, multi-line invoices, segmentation, or breakouts or allocations, and they're like, well, we were $500,000 into this custom product, and we can't solve this case or that case, and I was like, well, that's kind of the hard part, right? And so that's where you can end up in a trap where you've not only spent a lot of money doing it, which you had to get approved, you had to you had to put your internal capital in line for it, but then you're facing issues around the quality or user experience from the business perspective, and that can create friction between the tech team and the business team, where the business isn't happy with the end result, even though a lot of money's been spent, and you never want to end up in that position, right? And so I'd say definitely there's cases where these tools can be applied for internal, very custom, very specific things, but obviously, I'm a little biased in this, but I think there's a lot of very good tools out there that are taking advantage of this and have the advantage of significant investment, advantage of scope and scale of viewing complexity and things that what ifs down the road of that only are learned over time, and have the capacity to really understand, how can I make this really efficient for the end user, for the business user? How can I deliver to them a good experience? So that's what I wanted to talk about, is that I think there should be a conversation about build versus buy. There should be some thought about, what do we truly want to build? What are the costs going to be? Not just the initial costs, but the ongoing costs of additional features and maintenance and support, but also the costs as far as that relationship between the business and the tech team. And also, what's our process for evaluating what's in the market already, right? Because if I'm going to go spend $1 million building something that's half as good as the product that would have cost me $30,000, to buy, because it's out there in the market already, does that make sense, right? And how will that look later on when I have to defend my decision? So, Good topic to discuss. I'm excited to hear what you all think about that. And I think build versus buy is something that's going to change over time, particularly as AI helps people build as well. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic between internal resources and external resources on that. But thank you all.